Riker Griffin stood on the marble balcony of Zyndale Palace, the morning sun glinting off the city's bronze roof towers. Cheers drifted up from the avenue below, citizens waving flags, chanting his name. He bowed with a polite smile, but inside his chest a knot tightened. In the throne room, King Griffin spoke softly yet firmly. "Son, you have 3 months. Zyndale's law is clear. A king must be married. Find a wife of good heart, or the council will pass the crown to your cousin." Riker's jaw clenched. "Father, every woman I meet sees only the throne. How do I know who truly loves me?" The king's weary eyes held both sympathy and steel. A true heart shines brightest when no one is watching. That night, Riker paced his ornate chamber, replaying painful memories. An influencer who asked for a proposal on livestream. A socialite who demanded a mansion before their third date. A designer who whispered, "Your Highness," with more greed than affection. He stopped at the window, staring into the dark. "I need to disappear," he murmured. So he came up with a plan to move to a faraway city to find a wife that would love him in truth and not for the money or fame. The plan? In the palace garage, Riker's loyal friend and driver, Kobe, helped dress him in plain brown trousers, a faded polo, and a mailman's cap. Kobe grinned. "Your Highness, nobody will believe you deliver letters." "That's the point," Riker replied, tucking his royal signet ring into a pouch. "From now on, call me Rye." Kobe handed over a dented motor scooter and an old satchel stuffed with envelopes. "Springford is 2 hours east. Small place. Roofs leak more than secrets there. You'll be safe." Riker clasped Kobe's shoulder. "Keep this between us. If father asks, I'll say the prince is on a silent retreat," Kobe promised. Arrival in Springford. Riker Griffin stepped down from the dusty intercity bus, the vehicle's brakes sighing like an old dragon. Heat swirled up from Springford's cracked pavement, carrying the smell of roasted plantain, petrol, and river breeze. Vendors shouted prices, taxi horns beeped, children wove through carts stacked with oranges. No one glanced twice at the tall stranger in plain khaki trousers and a brown polo. That anonymity felt like fresh air. He adjusted the cheap canvas bag on his shoulder, squeezing through the crowd toward a peeling wooden notice board outside the post office. Among faded concert flyers, one new sheet flapped in the wind. "City Courier Service, delivery rider needed. Start today. Ask for Mr. G-Day inside." Riker's pulse quickened. Perfect, he thought. Delivering letters would let him meet real people, learn honest streets, stay hidden. He tore off the bottom tab with the office number and pushed open the glass door. Inside smelled of paper and ink. A balding man in spectacles looked up from a cluttered desk. "Yes, I'm here about the rider position," Riker said, keeping his voice steady. The man studied him. "Experience? I can read maps, ride any two-wheeler, and I'm never late," Riker answered, recalling palace drills that measured punctuality to the second. Mr. G-Day grunted. "Uniform deposit is 10,000 naira. You'll get a battered scooter and a route that scares rookies." Riker handed over the cash he'd changed at the terminal. "Where do I sign?" 10 minutes later, he walked back on his street, wearing a faded cap marked Springford Mail. He exhaled, tasting freedom and engine fumes. The prince was gone. Rye the courier had just begun his first day. Above him, the clock rang noon, and Rye smiled, knowing each tick carried him further from the palace and closer to himself. Riker, now Rye, to everyone in Springford, woke before sunrise each day. His rented room above Mrs. Abina's bakery was tiny, a narrow cot, a creaking wardrobe, and one cracked window that let in the smell of rising bread. It was nothing like the velvet-draped chambers of Zyndale Palace, yet Rye found the simplicity refreshing. He brewed instant coffee on a hot plate and plotted his delivery route on a dog-eared map, whistling as he marked each stop. The first delivery. Late one humid morning, Rye pushed open the glass door of Colin's Accessories with a parcel tucked under one arm. Preszley looked up from behind the counter, her face streaked with a smudge of blue dye. "Oh," she exclaimed, wiping her cheek. "You're the new mailman. Sorry about the mess, bracelet accident." Rye grinned. "No worries. I've survived worse." Once wrestled a dog for someone's letter. Preszley laughed. Poor dog. Trust me, the dog won. He placed the box on the counter. Package for Preszley Collins. She reached for a felt tip pen. Sign. He froze, realizing the line for courier name stared back at him. He scrawled a shaky Rym before she could notice his hesitation. Preszley glanced at the signature. Rye like bread. Exactly. Best sliced with jam. She chuckled, then leaned over the box. These should be my crystal beads from Azure Imports. Been waiting forever. When the tape finally peeled away, her shoulders sagged. Wrong color. They sent ice gray instead of sea green. Rye bent closer. Maybe you can turn the mistake into something new. Preszley blinked. That's actually a good idea. Ice gray with amber could be stunning. Happy accidents, he said, tipping his cap. She grinned. Thanks, mailman Rye. For the first time in months, Rye's heartbeat stuttered. Not from palace deadlines, but from a genuine connection. Chance encounters. The following week, Rye's scooter sputtered to a halt outside the same shop. He opened the toolbox, pretending to fix a bolt while stealing glances through Preszley's window. She caught him staring and stepped outside. Mechanical trouble? She asked. I call it character building, he said, kicking the tire. Want me to hold the scooter while you pray over it? She teased. He laughed. Prayer might be step 2. Step 1 is coffee. You know a good place? My kitchen, she offered impulsively, cheeks flushing. I mean, we have a coffee machine in the back. Rye followed her inside, feeling strangely nervous. Preszley handed him a chipped mug with Dream Big painted in gold. He sipped and sighed happily. The coffee was too sweet, but her smile made it perfect. Why deliver mail? She asked, leaning on the counter. He shrugged. I like meeting people, and mail always brings a story. Birthdays, exams, love letters. Her eyes softened. A simple job with honest joys. I admire that. Rye swallowed. If she only knew the life he'd left behind. What about you? Why accessories? My mom says it's small potatoes, Preszley replied, twirling a strand of hair. But designing jewelry makes me feel free, like I can color the world. That's beautiful, he said, genuinely moved. Outside, a distant church bell rang, snapping them back. Rye set the mug down. Thanks for the coffee. Scooter's jealousy will pass now. Preszley smiled. Any time, Rye. Growing friendship. Days passed. Deliveries multiplied. Preszley ordered new supplies just to have a reason for Rye to stop by. He learned she preferred pineapple buns to croissants, that she danced while stringing beads, and that she kept a weathered notebook titled Big Dreams in her apron pocket. One rainy afternoon, Rye arrived soaked, clutching a padded envelope over his head. You'll catch a cold, Preszley cried, pulling him inside. She tossed him a towel. Dry off, hero. Rye toweled his hair. Storm ambushed me. Parcel for you, metal clasps. She opened it and squealed. Perfect. Turning, she slipped on the wet floor. Rye caught her, arms steady. Their faces hovered inches apart. Preszley blushed and stepped back. Thank you, mailman Rye. He cleared his throat. Part of the service. They both laughed to break the tension. Late-night confessions. One evening, the power flickered across Springford. Streetlights dimmed, and shops closed early. Preszley locked up but noticed Rye sitting on the curb, scooter chain in hand. Chain snapped? She asked, crouching. Yeah. Spare part shop is shut. He shivered. The night air felt colder than usual. Wait here. Preszley ducked inside her store, returned with a blanket and a steaming thermos of ginger tea. They sat under the shop awning, sipping in silence while rain drummed overhead. Preszley exhaled. I'm glad you're here. Rye's chest warmed. Me too. She stared at the wet street. Sometimes I think Springford's tiny roads can't hold my dreams. Rye tilted his head. Tell me one. She hesitated, then smiled shyly. I want a flagship store in Zyndale. I want people to feel joy when they wear my designs. Rye's heart panged. Zyndale was his world, yet she spoke of it like a distant star. You can do it, he said. Your work shines. Preszley bit her lip. My mom doesn't think so. She wants me to marry rich and quit this hobby. Your mom should see what I see, Rye murmured. Courage, creativity, kindness. Thunder boomed overhead. Rye draped the blanket across both their shoulders, a gentle closeness. Preszley rested her head lightly on his arm. The city's noise faded, and only the rain seemed to applaud. The Viviana situation. 2 days later, Rye entered the shop to find Preszley in tears. Viviana Collins stood beside her, dressed in a tailored suit and dripping disdain. "This is the mailman?" Viviana scoffed, inspecting Rye as one might inspect a stain. "Preszley, surely you have better company to keep." "Mom, stop!" Preszley whispered, eyes pleading. Viviana waved an envelope. "A dinner invitation, Mr. Mailman. Derek Miles, wealthy, respectable, will be there. Preszley needs connections, not casual friends." Rye forced a polite grin. "Even casual friends can deliver important messages, ma'am." Viviana raised an eyebrow. "Is that so? Well, deliver this. Ambition requires upgrading one's circle." She turned to Preszley. 7 o'clock. With a sapphire dress. After she left, Preszley crumpled onto a stool, shoulders shaking. Rye knelt. "Hey, breathe. She treats me like a pawn," Preszley said, wiping tears. "Derek is her latest scheme. He brags about his cars, belittles my shop." Rye's fists clenched. "You don't have to go. If I refuse, Mom will threaten to cut me off. She paid my shop's startup loan." Rye gently took her hands. "Preszley, your worth isn't tied to her approval or Derek's wallet. You can stand your ground." She managed a weak smile. "You make it sound simple." "Simple? No, but possible." He squeezed her fingers. "I believe in you. Small acts, big feelings." That night, Preszley found a tiny package on her doorstep. Inside lay a note. "For courage, Rye." The parcel contained a single sea-green bead, rare and luminous, like the one she had wanted. Preszley pressed it to her chest, tears glistening. Meanwhile, Rye paced his apartment, wrestling with truth. Telling her he was Prince Riker might solve her financial worries, but would destroy the trust blossoming between them. He glanced at the leather bracelet on his wrist, her first gift, and decided, not yet. Authentic love needed time. Unspoken promises. Over the following weeks, they met for sunrise coffee, strolled down market streets, laughed at town square musicians. Rye helped fix shelves in her shop. Preszley showed him how to knot a friendship bracelet. With every shared secret, their bond deepened. One evening, Preszley reread Rye's courage note, then texted him, "Dinner with Derek tomorrow. Could use moral support afterward." Rye replied instantly, "Front seat of Laughing Goat Cafe, 8:30. We'll celebrate your strength, no matter what." Preszley exhaled, tension easing. Somewhere across town, Rye smiled at his phone, oblivious to the palace messenger arriving in Zyondale with urgent news for the missing prince. As moonlight quilted Springford's roofs, Preszley whispered into the dark, "Maybe true love does exist." And in his sparse room, Rye whispered back to the night, "Please let her see me when the mask finally comes off." The sun was just beginning to sink behind Springford's low rooftops when Viviana Collins pulled up outside her daughter's shop in a sleek black sedan. The engine purred like a satisfied cat, and the woman behind the wheel wore an expression just as predatory. She stepped out, heels clicking on the pavement, sapphire earrings dancing in the fading light, pausing only to smooth an imaginary crease in her tailored suit before marching through the glass door of Collins Accessories. Inside, Preszley was pricing a display of new ice gray and amber bracelets, her latest happy accident, line inspired by Riker's kind words. She looked up, surprised. "Mom, I wasn't expecting." Viviana's gaze was sharp and cold. "Close the register." Preszley frowned. "It's only 6. Rush hour's my busiest time." "Do as I say." Preszley reluctantly pressed the button. The drawer slid shut with a soft clink that sounded to her ears like a jail door. The warning. Viviana paced the narrow aisle between shelves. "The neighborhood has been talking. You're spending an awful lot of time with that mailman." "Rye's my friend," Preszley said, trying to keep her voice calm. "He's decent and funny. He respects me. He is a poor deliverman with no prospects." Viviana snapped. "And you are wasting your potential, hawking trinkets, drinking cheap coffee." Preszley's cheeks warmed with anger. "These trinkets pay my bills. They make people smile." "Cute," Viviana sneered. But smiles don't buy penthouses. Derek Miles invited you to a charity auction in Zinedale next week. That is the kind of man you should be smiling at. I don't want Derek. Viviana's voice dropped, icy and low. You will attend the auction, and you will shut down this online store tonight. Preszley staggered. Shut down? Mom, that's my dream. It is a distraction, Viviana declared. Real success comes from marrying well and knowing one's place. Delete your website, cancel those deliveries, and focus on your future. An unwelcome confrontation. 2 evenings later, Riker, still known to all as Rye, parked his scooter outside the Collins small townhouse, balancing a parcel on his hip. He had not seen Preszley since the night she told him about the auction. His stomach twisted with worry. At the gate, he took a breath, rehearsing what he would say. I believe in you. You don't have to let anyone dim your sparkle. He rang the bell. Viviana opened the door, blocking the entryway like an iron gate. The overhead light glinted off her earrings. You, she said, lips curling. The courier. Good evening, ma'am. Rye began politely. Is Preszley in? She is unavailable. Viviana folded her arms. And from now on, there will be no packages, no doorstep chats, no uninvited visits. Rye held up the parcel. She ordered these leather cords. Return them. Viviana's tone sliced like glass. She stepped onto the porch, forcing him backward. Listen carefully, delivery man. My daughter needs a husband with ambition, not a stray dog begging for scraps of affection. Rye's jaw clenched, but he kept his voice even. With respect, ma'am, Preszley decides what she needs. Viviana's eyes hardened. She decides nothing while she relies on my money. And I say your friendship ends tonight. From somewhere inside, Preszley called. Mom? Who's at the door? She sounded worried, but before she could appear, Viviana slammed it shut. Cruel humiliation. Rye lingered at the gate, debating whether to try again. Suddenly the door burst open and Viviana reemerged, wielding a metal bucket brimming with icy water. Neighbors along the street turned curious heads. Consider this a final cleansing, she hissed. Before Rye could step aside, the water crashed over him, soaking his shirt, his trousers, even the parcel. Gasps rose from the nearby porches. A child pointed. Someone stifled a laugh. Preszley darted into the doorway, just in time to see Rye standing drenched, water dripping from his curls onto the dirt path. Rye, she cried, rushing forward. But her mother's hand shot out, barring her way. Inside, Preszley. Now. Preszley's eyes filled with tears. Mom, stop it. Viviana stared her daughter down. If you cross that threshold to him, you can forget your place in this house. Rye wiped water from his lashes, trying to gather some dignity. With a trembling smile, he met Preszley's gaze. I'm okay, he assured her. Really? She tried to reach him again, but Viviana's grip tightened. Choose, the older woman whispered sharply. Family or failure. Preszley's shoulders shook. She mouthed, I'm so sorry, but she did not step past her mother. Rye understood. Still clutching the ruined parcel, he turned for his scooter. Each step felt heavier than royal armor. He mounted, engine sputtering, and drove away, spraying droplets on the street like scattered tears. Echoes in the silence. Back in his cramped room above the bakery, Rye peeled off the wet uniform and sat on the edge of the cot. The leather bracelet Preszley had made him felt cold against his skin. He turned it slowly, thinking of the council's ticking deadline, of his father's expectant eyes, of the crown he might lose. None of it hurt as much as that doorway and Preszley's silent apology. He opened the soggy parcel. The leather cords inside were ruined. He traced a fingertip over the water-blurred shipping label. Preszley's handwriting, bold and hopeful. A lump formed his throat. If I reveal who I am, he thought, Viviana would kneel. Preszley would be free from that leverage. But would she ever trust my heart again? He dropped his head into his hands. 3 months, he whispered. 3 months, and I can't even keep the one person who sees the real me. Preszley's turmoil. Across town, Preszley sat on her bed, the glare from her laptop reflecting in red-rimmed eyes. The cursor blinked beside the words close store, permanently. Her mother's voice echoed. Ambition requires upgrading one's circle. Preszley hovered over the confirm button, fingers shaking. On her bedside table lay the single sea-green bead Rye had gifted her, the courage bead. She pressed it gently to her lips, searching for strength. But Mom paid off the landlord, she reasoned aloud. If I resist, she might pull the loan. The bead felt warm. She imagined Rye's steady voice. Your worth isn't tied to her approval. Tears slipped down her cheeks. I'm sorry, Rye, she whispered and clicked. The screen flashed, store deleted. With it, all pending deliveries, every excuse to see him, vanished. A quiet farewell. The next morning, Preszley walked to the market square, hoping by some miracle to find Rye on his route. But his scooter never buzzed down Main Street. No cat bobbed between mailboxes. She turned a slow circle amid bustling vendors, suddenly aware of how big the town felt without him. Mrs. Abina, the baker, called. Looking for someone, dear? Preszley attempted a small smile and shook her head. The smell of fresh bread twisted her stomach. Returning home, she passed the spot where the bucket had splashed. A dark stain on the gravel remained, a ghostly outline of the water that had driven a wedge between them. Preszley knelt, touching the damp earth as if it might speak. Come back, she breathed. The wind answered only with silence. Riker's vow. That same day, Riker stood at the city limits of Springford, helmet in hand. Behind him, the rooftops shimmered in noon light. Ahead, the highway ribboned back toward Ziondale's distant spires. He could still feel the slap of cold water, not on his skin but on his heart. I need to fix this, he told the horizon. For her, and for me. He slipped the royal signet ring from its pouch and turned it over, a reminder of power he never wanted to wield, yet might need. Sliding the ring back into hiding, he revved the scooter. As the engine roared to life, he whispered a promise Preszley could not yet hear. I will return, not as Rye the mailman, but as the man who loves you, whatever it costs. With that, Prince Riker Griffin sped toward the capital, rainwater long dried, but heartache still falling like a storm he could not outrun. Preszley Collins sat by her bedroom window every night, staring at the quiet street where Rye's scooter used to zip past. The moon still rose faithfully, but its silver glow felt empty without his cheerful wave or the off-key whistle he always tried to hide. Weeks had crawled by since the humiliating bucket incident, and each day her heart throbbed with questions she was too ashamed to ask aloud. Downstairs, the house had cooled into a polite winter. Viviana no longer scolded or shouted. She spoke in clipped sentences about proper behavior and life-changing opportunities. Preszley answered with single words, folding her grief into silence. The warmth between mother and daughter, once fragile but real, had frozen solid. The arrangement. One Saturday, Viviana swept into the living room in a cloud of expensive perfume, holding a golden boss card. Good news, she announced, lips curved in brittle triumph. Derek Miles has proposed an engagement dinner. Your acceptance, of course, is assumed. Preszley's stomach curled. Mom, Derek barely knows me. He knows your potential, Viviana corrected, and he has the resources to elevate it. Resources aren't the same as love. Preszley's voice trembled, but she stood her ground. I want someone who values people, not price tags. Viviana's eyes narrowed. Fairy tales are for children, Preszley. Reality is gold-plated and signed in ink. Dinner with Derek. Despite her protests, Preszley found herself seated across from Derek at an upscale bistro in downtown Springford. Crystal chandeliers dripped light onto white tablecloths. Violin music drifted through the air like expensive cologne. Derek flashed perfect teeth. So, Preszley, he drawled, swirling wine. Your accessory hobby. Ever thought about scaling up? Cheap charm bracelets for the lower classes could print cash if marketed right. Preszley blinked. The lower classes? Derek shrugged. You know, people who count pennies. They'll buy anything that glitters. Exploit the dream, reap the profits. The words struck like stones. Images flooded her mind. Mrs. Abina giving free buns to hungry street kids, Rye delivering letters with genuine care, neighbors sharing umbrellas during spring storms. None of them were lower to her. They were her community. She pushed her chair back abruptly. Excuse me. In the restroom, Preszley gripped the sink until her knuckles whitened. Tears blurred the mirror. Is this the future Mom wants for me? Standing beside a man who mocks kindness? She inhaled shakily, wiped her eyes, and walked out, ignoring Derek's raised eyebrow as she told the waiter to send the bill to her mother's account. Distances and doubts. Back home, Viviana waited in the foyer like a coiled snake. Did you impress him? She asked. I'm not for sale, Preszley replied quietly. She climbed the stairs before more words could wound them both, clutching the single sea-green courage bead in her fist. Upstairs, she opened her laptop to the blank space where her online store used to live, a digital tombstone that read "Sight Not Found." Preszley rested her forehead on the screen, grief seeping through her bones. If only Rye were here. He'd tell me to fight. The silence breaks. A week later, on an ordinary Wednesday afternoon, Preszley stacked grocery bags on her porch. The sun blazed overhead when a distant rumble shook the pavement. Her first thought was thunder, but the sky was cloudless. Then a siren blared, rich and musical, unlike any police horn she'd heard. Neighbors spilled from their houses, murmuring as a convoy of gleaming black SUVs rolled around the corner. Motorcycles bearing a gold lion insignia escorted the line. Flags fluttered on antennae, deep green with a crowned griffin at the center. It was the royal crest of Zinedale. Preszley's pulse quickened. People pressed closer, phones raised. The convoy stopped directly in front of her gate. Soldiers in ceremonial uniforms leapt out, creating a perfect aisle. A tall chauffeur opened the rear door of the central limousine. Out stepped Riker Griffin, no longer Rye the mailman, but Prince Riker, heir to Zinedale's throne. His ebony robe shimmered with emerald thread. The royal signet ring glinted on his finger. Yet his eyes, warm, maple brown, were exactly the same. The crowd gasped. Viviana, who had rushed outside to see the commotion, clutched the railing. Your Highness, she stammered, voice wobbling between awe and terror. Riker's gaze never shifted from Preszley. He walked forward, each step sure but gentle, parting the stunned spectators like tide around a rock. Preszley's groceries slid from her hands, oranges rolling across the porch. She hardly noticed. Riker, she whispered when he stood before her. He offered a soft smile. I was Rye because I needed to know who I was without a crown. But I'm also Riker, the man who fell in love with you over coffee and cardboard parcels. Tears sprang to her eyes. You're a prince? Yes, he said, voice steady. But with you, I learned how to be simply a man. Viviana's plea. A thunk echoed as Viviana dropped to her knees on the stone path. Please forgive me, Your Highness, she begged, head bowed. I was blind to your worth. My actions were disgraceful. Riker's expression remained calm, but he didn't spare her a glance. The gathering neighbors held their breath. Derek, who had driven by out of curiosity, hovered near his sports car, jaw hanging open. Viviana crawled forward. If I had known. Riker spoke, still looking only at Preszley. A person's kindness should not depend on knowing another's title. He paused, letting the words land. My heart will answer love, not flattery. Viviana's shoulders shook with shame. She could not rise. Derek cleared his throat, edging away, but Riker's chief guard stepped forward, blocking him. Your invitation to the palace is revoked, Mr. Miles, the guard said coolly. Derek paled and fled toward his car. Riker's offer. Riker extended his hand to Preszley. Come home with me. She hesitated, tears trembling on her lashes. Your world is so different. Our worlds met the day you gave me a leather bracelet. He turned his wrist, revealing it beneath the royal sleeve, a humble band against velvet. You saw me then, and you see me now. But my shop is gone, she whispered. Mom shut it down. We'll rebuild it, he said, not because of royal funds, but because your dream matters. Preszley's heart surged with hope, yet lingering doubt flickered. What about your council? They wanted a princess, not a shopkeeper. I decide whom I marry, Riker replied. A throne without love is just a chair of gold. With you beside me, it becomes a future worth ruling. He knelt, prince before artisan, royalty before courage lover. and pressed the sea-green bead into her palm. When you gave me this color, you named it hope. Let guide us now. Her fingers closed around the bead, and his. A hush fell. Even the cicadas seemed to pause their song. Yes, she breathed. I'll come. Epilogue of the moment. Cheers erupted as Riker helped Preszley into the limousine. Cameras flashed, capturing a dusty town transformed into a fairy tale gateway. Viviana remained kneeling, tears staining her makeup, forced to confront a lesson wealth had never taught her: humility. Inside the car, Preszley looked at Riker, searching his eyes. Why did you choose Springford? He smiled. Because Springford had you. The convoy pulled away, engines humming like a royal hymn. Children ran alongside, waving. Preszley rested her head on Riker's shoulder, the courage bead warm between their interlaced fingers. And on the porch behind them, a single orange rolled to a stop, bright as a sunrise over two hearts that had finally found their dawn. The journey from Springford to Zyandale felt like traveling through time. One moment, Preszley sat in the back of Riker's royal limousine, clutching his hand. The next, the city's gold-tipped towers shone before her like something from a painting. Courtiers bowed as the convoy rolled through palace gates. Even then, Riker leaned close and whispered, "You're not a guest. You're home." Preparations for a dream. The palace staff quickly learned their future queen preferred simple laughter to stiff formality. Preszley asked footmen about their families, tested cake samples with the kitchen maids, and insisted every seamstress's name appear on the wedding program. When planners displayed a gown dripping with rubies, Preszley smiled and chose a lighter dress embroidered with tiny sea-green beads, the same color of hope Riker had first given her. One afternoon, Riker guided her to a sunlit courtyard where investors and palace advisors were waiting. "I promised we'd rebuild your business," he said, placing a velvet folder in her hands. Inside were legal papers declaring Collins Crown Creations an official royal partner, complete with startup capital, marketing teams, and a storefront on Zyandale's busiest avenue. Preszley blinked back tears. "You made my dream bigger than I ever imagined." Riker kissed her forehead. "Your dream made me bigger than any crown." The wedding of hearts. On the wedding day, sunlight poured through stained glass windows of Zyandale's Grand Cathedral. Trumpets announced the bride's entrance, yet a hush fell as Preszley walked the aisle in her beaded gown, radiating calm joy. Riker waited beside the priest, wearing a tailored emerald robe, but his eyes never left hers. "Do you, Riker Griffin, pledge your life to the one who loved you without knowing your title?" "I do," he answered, voice steady. "And do you, Preszley Collins, accept both man and crown, promising to guide this kingdom with kindness?" "I do," she said, squeezing his hands. The cathedral erupted in cheers. Outside, doves soared while citizens watched on giant screens, waving banners that read "Love sees beyond gold." In that moment, Zyandale felt smaller than their two interlocking hearts. A mother's lesson. Viviana stood near the back, elegant yet subdued. Regret shadowed her eyes as she witnessed the applause. During the reception, she approached cautiously and bowed, but Preszley lifted her up. "Mother, you may visit us," Preszley said gently, "but only if you respect people of every class. My staff, my neighbors, my husband, they're equal in this palace." Viviana's voice trembled. "I promise, my daughter." Pride closed my eyes. Love has opened them. From then on, every visit required Viviana to spend a morning volunteering at Zyandale's community workshop, stringing bracelets beside apprentices Preszley had hired from modest villages. Slowly, humility replaced her old arrogance. The crown and the future. 2 weeks later, the throne room brimmed with diplomats and villagers alike. King Griffin placed the royal circlet on Riker's brow, then turned to Preszley, setting a smaller but matching crown on her head. The new king and queen rose hand in hand. Riker addressed the assembly. "A crown shines brightest when it reflects the goodness of its people. My queen showed me that light. Together, we will rule with open doors and listening hearts." Preszley added, "And we will empower every artisan, dreamer, and child who thinks greatness is out of reach. It's not." Your stories matter. Cheers thundered through the hall. Outside, fireworks painted the evening sky, their colors echoing sea green and gold. As they stood on the balcony, Riker whispered, "Still nervous?" Preszley laughed softly. "Not when I'm beside the mailman prince." He smiled. "And I beside the queen who delivered hope." Hand in hand, they looked over Zyondale, a kingdom ready for a new chapter, one stitched with courage, humility, and love that saw beyond crowns to the hearts beneath.